Yeah, I also love that you talked about those internal boundaries. Man, that's a big one. Is there anything else you could say about how we cultivate those if we just have no freaking clue what our own edges are or where we end and another begins?
That goes back to the same dynamic of learning we're invisible and we don't matter. And so we never developed our morals and values, needs and wants, negotiables and non-negotiables. So we don't have an inner container. Here's the difficulty. Almost everyone I talk to, whether they think they're codependent or not, they all think they know what their morals and values and needs and wants and negotiables and non-negotiables are. I have not met a single person who hasn't been through decades of recovery that actually knows what they are. They're just modeling what they went through. Plus, they don't really know the definitions of each one. So let me go through that. And this is what creates our internal boundaries. So we know what to say yes or no to. If we don't do this, work is critical if we want to be able to use that 5-step process. So the first thing is the difference between a moral and value. Most people think their morals are the things they believe in. A moral is just whether you think something is good or bad. Your values are what you believe in. So let's say you, I don't know, are a vegetarian. Your value is to only eat things that grow in the earth. And so you would see it as morally good to eat vegetables. You would see eating meat as morally bad. So your belief around meat is that it's morally bad for you. All right. And so what we have to do is go through our entire life. And relationships, every aspect of it. What's your moral and value around finances? Who pays the bills? Um, what kind of savings do you have? How do you invest? What are your thoughts and feelings on marriage? Do you believe you should live together? Is it okay to be intimate before marriage or after marriage? What about parenting style? How would you discipline a child? What kind of schooling would they go to? Like, there are millions of morals and values. Most people don't even know that. And the perfect example of this in almost every couple that I work with, they come to me because they have a fundamental issue between morals and values. And those morals and values were present at day one. But because they had to give themselves away as a child, they did it. An example comes to my mind. A woman had been married 18 years. She got in touch. She was frustrated because her husband smokes pot and he won't quit. And so I asked her, how'd you guys meet? Oh, it was great. It was at this house party. It was kind of a block party. And I went through the garage, turned the corner, and there he was. He was with a bunch of friends smoking a joint and having fun. And he was just so attractive. And I was like, did you hear what you just said? He did it from day one. But she learned as a child she had no voice. She couldn't have her own morals and values, needs and wants. And so something that was, she didn't know that pot smoking was non-negotiable. And so she picked somebody who went against everything she believes in. Now she's blaming him and wants him to change because that's what she got taught by her parents. And so that's why this step is critical of knowing our morals and values, needs and wants. I have 3 videos on my codependence playlist on my YouTube channel, which walk you through it, that give you a beginning. I urge everybody to really do that work. The next thing is our needs and wants. Needs are things we need to survive: food, clothing, shelter, money, physical and emotional connection. Wants are things that bring us joy. When we grow up in this dynamic, what most people do is they pursue their wants at the expense of their joys. These are people with credit card debt. So because they give themselves away, they don't know what their true needs and wants are. They buy things or they do things that sacrifice their needs and they can't meet their needs. So this is a whole nother process of going through everything, figuring what those are and learning how to meet our needs and wants ourselves instead of putting our partner in a position to be the parent we never had and demand that they do it for us. Finally, negotiables and non-negotiables are pretty straightforward. Um, are there certain, like for me, I'm an alcoholic, but I'm perfectly fine dating somebody or marrying somebody who has a drink here and there. But any drug at all, like I know everybody smokes pot, non-negotiable. Won't have it. Any drug at all. Won't go near. They could have everything else. I'm done. Won't have it. And so we need to know what those things are, especially before we get in a relationship when we're dating and all of that. And not knowing that, you get back to that internal boundary. I have this thing to show you here. This is not knowing our morals and values, needs and wants. That's what creates the codependence. You can see these two circles. These are, represent two individual people. The codependent dynamic is where they intersect. And this is how most people get in trouble, is they expect their partner to constantly meet their needs and wants. But do you see what you lose? You lose who you are as a person. There's no interdependence. You're totally dependent on the other person to make you think, feel, behave, and enjoy your life. Well, when we have, to back to your question of internal boundaries, when we know what our internal boundaries are, we can meet our own needs and wants. We can follow our own morals and values. And when we have the emotional reserves, each person makes an emotional or physical or intellectual or spiritual or physical intimacy deposit into this shared relational space. When this person is unable to, they say, I just don't have the bandwidth for that. Well, then this person is able to exercise all of these things on their own because they have internal boundaries. A person without internal boundaries demands their partner live here with them. And that you can see the loss of life that happens. And this is why most relationships fail, is basically you're asking someone else to be the parent you never had. And that's our job.
Mhm. I so love that. And you pretty much described my adult life of relationships and oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
that was me. Like the only reason I know any of this is because it's all me. I've had to work on it for decades.
Yeah, I appreciate that diagram. That was really, really helpful to really get that. And I so get like I love how the codependent part was this smaller piece and representing all the what's lost, all of us, all of who we really are, our
Well,
authenticity.
here's the other thing is, I don't have an issue if this piece is bigger, but like for me, see, I am primarily the disempowered codependent who's more on the love addict side, which means while I was enmeshed with and abandoned, my primary wound is abandonment. And so that makes me more the clingy, emotional type. Okay. So I need much more intersection. The person who's primarily enmeshed with and mildly abandoned, they're on what's called the love avoidance side of codependence. They're the falsely empowered, what our society thinks has their act together. All right. Well, they want very little intersection because emotional intimacy for them is scary to death because they were enmeshed with. And so they were used emotionally by their parents. So they do everything they can to avoid intimacy and connection. Well, my mother was an alcoholic and she'd be sober 4 to 6 weeks and was amazing. And then she'd be in a walking coma for 7 to 10 days. And I was responsible for caring for her. So I suffered horrific, repeated abandonment over and over and over. And so that love avoidant, the falsely empowered codependent who's love avoidant, I've worked my tail off. I'm much better, but I still freak out around those people. It's very difficult. Now, I also struggle with the very clingy, needy type because that was my mom. But here's the difference. The person who's more love addict, disempowered, codependent, like myself, they will go to therapy. They'll do anything because their primary wound is abandonment. Just don't leave me. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. The avoidant won't. And I can't survive that. And so while my skin can crawl at times, I can tell that love addict, primarily abandoned woman, hey, I'm freaking out right now. I'm putting my mom's face on you. This is my issue. I just need to let you know about it. And they're like, oh my God, okay. And you can discuss it. And that's what I need. And so all I ever picked were love avoidant, people And so I repeated that. So I had to learn what are my morals and values, needs and wants, negotiables and non-negotiables, so I could keep my internal boundary. I could stay adult, moderate, and mature. And when I dropped into that adapted wounded child, I had a partner I could express it with, and we could talk through it. And so that's why I impress, and it's fascinating. Whenever I talk codependence, I tell people go watch those videos, and they have like 5,000 views. Nobody goes and watches them. But that you want to get good at this stuff, you want to recover, you have to become an expert in morals and values, needs and wants, negotiables and non-negotiables, because that gives you the process to say no, and it opens the door to so many different things.
Oh, absolutely love it. Yeah, and what you said about the non-negotiables, it reminded me of also a couple of relationships in my 20s where I dated people who smoked cigarettes, and that was in my mind it was a non-negotiable. Like, well, I'm not going to date someone who smokes cigarettes. That's not in my morals and values system, and yet I did multiple times, and so I guess that was negotiable in in that sense.
Well, I don't know. That's the thing. We can look back and go, well, maybe I am okay with it. But that's what I had to look at, is all these morals and values I had, were they really mine? No, they were mostly adaptations of me going along with things because that's what I learned in childhood. My job is to be the easy one, the quiet one, who who allows everybody else to feel safe and secure. And if I ever have a need and want, that's a problem. And I didn't like being a problem because that meant I got even more rejection. And so I was trying to avoid that, but I realized you guarantee rejection when you live that way. And so I had to learn to, face that incorrect skew and recognize the only way you'll ever have a relationship where two people are present is when you say the single most loving word you can say to anyone, no. Do you see why it's so loving? Because there's no keeping score, there's no throwing it in their face. Like, I love when I hear no. I'm so safe when someone says no to me, because I know I'm not going to get hit over the head. I know I'm not going to get surprised. And so, unfortunately, books, love songs, media, TV teach us if you love somebody, you say yes to everything. That is the most abusive thing you can do to somebody. If you use that 5-step process and you think any of those things happen and you go along with it, you have just initiated abuse. We are now the abuser. And that's the thing I had to realize, is when I give myself away like that, I'm the abuser, and the mistreatment I'm going to get back, I started it. I have to own that. That's on me. And once I learned how to, use that process, I stopped getting abused by people.